Today, we'll continue with the player capsules, one of the more fun evaluations of this past season. We'll take a look at Miles Bridges, the positives and the negatives. Plus, there might be a new way to watch the Charlotte Hornets next season. We'll talk about all of that today on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
You are Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We're free. We're available on all platforms, including YouTube. And you can follow me on Twitter at Walker Mail, Doug on Twitter at Doug Branson LOH, and the show handle on Twitter at Locked On Hornets. Before we get started with Miles Bridges today, I just wanted to take a moment and look back at Friday's episode and just embrace all of the chaos that took place on that Hive Live. Did you watch it back, Doug?
I watched part. I typically go back to the episodes and just watch parts of them. It's a little bit of quality check. It's really only the parts where I talk. I just want to make sure that I'm as brilliant as I think I am. Confirmed, by the way.
Was that confirmed on Friday for you?
Yes. And the commenters, I read if you don't think I don't read the comments, you're crazy. I read the comments. I read the good ones. I read the bad ones. Sometimes I get in there and I chop it up. I get the hand emoji in there, chopping it up with the commenters. I'm not afraid, people.
I thought about chopping it up the other day. People were mad at me about some of the Mark Jackson comments, and I was like, what are you talking about? This is all documented, reported, whatever. That was the only time I really thought about chopping it up. But other than that, I did want to just embrace some of the comments towards you and how great you were on Friday with the graphics, with just going off into Doug land and giving us the excellence that is Doug Branson. And I'm excited to see what you have for us today regarding Miles Bridges.
Well, listen, I am a fully formed take machine, but the machine that is the show is still a work in progress. We're getting better every day. We're taking it one show at a time. All of the pieces, we're making this show better. We're on YouTube now. You can see our faces. So I am a fully formed take machine, but the show, we're still putting it together. But it's still, I think it's great. I love the chaos on Fridays. If you don't tune into us on YouTube any day of the week, just do it on Fridays. That's all I ask, because it is crazy. David comes. It's a good time.
It was a good time. We talked a lot about the coaching candidates. I thought that was a good show, just about the information on the coaching candidates who we like, we don't like, some of the positives that they might bring. And so if you want to go check that out, still relevant. Haven't named a coach yet. So the Hornets have to do that before they get a lot of stuff done this offseason. So you can go check that out on YouTube, anywhere you get your podcast, the Hive Live coaching candidates. Now let's talk about Miles Bridges. This was always going to be one of the more fun player evaluations. And we're going to start with the positives here, Doug. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Some of the traditional stats, the counting stats that led him, at least for a majority of the season, to be in the MIP award conversation. Eventually, he would fall out of the top 5. I think he finished 7th, if I'm not mistaken. I know he was out of the top 5 altogether. And that was really surprising. If you would have gone even a couple of months before the season ended, I would have said he was solidly in the top 5. But a Jordan Poole, a Tyrese Maxey, you have John Morant eventually get that award. You have a couple of these other guys end up above Miles Bridges. Darius Garland is one of them. But the reason Miles is being talked about in that category, he increased his points per game total by almost 8. He averaged 20 a game this season. His rebounds per game increased. His assists per game increased. You look at him not necessarily shooting the ball as well as he did last year, and we'll get that in the second segment, but he shot a lot more. He got to the free throw line, still shot well from the charity stripe. A beast down low, finishing at the basket. Lots went right for Miles Bridges this season, Doug.
Yeah, let me just run you through the very beginning of this season. So he opens, that game against Indiana was really LaMelo Ball takeover time. So he didn't get a lot of shots in this game. 13 points on 8 attempts, 4 of 8 from the field, 8 rebounds, 4 assists. We thought after that first game, I think it was like, all right, this is the Miles that we've come to know and love. This is, generally his impact. He's going to score 20 sometimes, but generally, this is what he's going to give you was 1 of 4 from 3 in that game. But then explosion happens. Cleveland in a win, 13 of 24 from the field, 30 points. That's 54% shooting and 7 rebounds. Next game against Brooklyn, that's also a dub. They opened the season 3-0, 9 of 16 from the field, 56%, 11 of 12 from the free throw line. This wasn't a guy that got to the free throw line a lot. 32 points, 9 rebounds. When he got to the line, he was great. But, that was kind of the thing coming out of college, right? He didn't get to the line a lot because he wasn't driving a ton. Now he's driving a ton. Next game, 25 points. Next game, 31 points. Next game, 22 points. Next game, 19 points. All right, overall in October, those 7 games, he averaged 24.6 points on 51% shooting, 37% from 3. It looked crazy. It looked like we were staring at a most improved player candidate, possibly, an all-star candidate had he kept it up.
Yeah, and I think that's true. And I think the shooting is probably what did not allow him to get some of those awards or maybe even climb like the other guys did. But we go through the points per game. I want to spend a little more time on the free throw attempts per game, Doug, because I think it made all the difference for him. Mm-hmm. This past season, he went to the line 4.2 times per game, and he had never gone more than twice per game the previous 3 NBA seasons. You mentioned it being a problem coming out of Michigan State. That was a well-documented thing. Like, why is this star who is a bull when he drives to the basket, why is he not going to the charity stripe nearly enough? It just didn't make sense. All right, here's a physical player. He's athletic. He can finish well at the rim, and yet he's not going to the foul line nearly as much. That all changed this year. And plus, when he shoots above 80%, he shot 87% last year. It dipped a little bit, but 80% is still good. You'll take that every day of the week. So I was really happy to see him get downhill and really just thrive in space, which is always something he's been very good at. Here's the other thing, too. When people attribute success based off what they see, like just the eye test, he looks more comfortable out there on the floor. Mm-hmm. If you go to some of those numbers that might be included in that category, it backs up the comfort level of Miles Bridges, if that makes sense. So if you go to what Miles Bridges was able to do as far as an assist percentage, that goes up. So his usage percentage goes up from 17.3% last year to 22.6% this year. Okay. A 5%. Yeah. Very significant 5 percentage total increase. His assist percentage goes up, which makes sense. It's from 11.4 to 15.7. Makes sense when your usage percentage goes up, but he actually is improving in that area, which is something we should note. All right. So his usage goes up, his assist percentage goes up. You would think his turnover percentage would go up too, which is fine. Like, that's what happens when you have the basketball in your hands, except it didn't. In fact, it decreased even with him having the basketball more in his hands. And not only did it decrease, Doug, it actually decreased a pretty significant amount. He had a turnover percentage last year of 13.6. This year it was 9.9. Despite having the basketball in his hands a lot more, despite playmaking for his teammates a lot more, his turnover percentage went down a lot more. That's not supposed to happen. That is what allowed Miles Bridges to be one of the better creators on this team, allow himself to be in that MIP at least top 10, which is still something that we should, sing praises to. That's what you love to see, right? Like a guy understanding the game as he goes along in his career. And now we'll look at some of this other stuff in the next segment, but a couple of things that I think can be cleaned up. Whew, no stopping the dude. I mean, that player that improves shooting and defense, that player is worth $30 million.
Yeah, it's interesting. But his role changed, and with that change came improvements in areas that we didn't see in previous seasons, and came with some things that didn't improve or got worse that were really essential parts of his role before. So as the role changed, so I think he's in the process of putting it all together. But I'll say, to stick with the good for Miles Bridges, I'll go bounce off of what you said on the assist percentage and the turnover percentage. He was responsible with the basketball. He improved a lot of his game. Like, obviously, you're going to look at the points per game and go, wow, huge leap, 12.7 points per game in the previous season. And then last season, it went to 20.2. That's why he was in those most improved player conversations. But he also improved his rebounding. He also improved his ball movement. And this team was a crazy good ball moving team, and part of that was the players with the ball in their hand the most were moving it, and Miles was a part of that. And finally, I'll just say that in a season where you didn't have as much Gordon Hayward as you obviously would have liked for this team, he was the player that you said, all right, we need a bucket, put the ball in Miles' hands. He's going to go and drive it and get us an easy bucket here. And that's essential for a team. And I think, that paired with Terry Rozier's clutch shooting and LaMelo's clutch playmaking allowed this team to win those 10 more regular season games. Had you not had this improvement from Miles, I have a hard time believing that this team would have been in the play-in conversation.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. There's no doubt about it. They needed this season from Miles Bridges. And just to finish up some of the positives, going back to his ability to draw fouls, last year he had 55 shooting fouls drawn. This year it was, or the year prior, this year it was 161. He increased that by over 100, which is just ridiculous. Points generated by assist. This past year, it was 754 compared to the year prior, 363. I mean, he doubled it. It's really incredible how he was able to improve so much this year. The on-off numbers are really good for him. And here's one other thing I want to mention. The versatility of Miles increased this year, too, not only with the basketball in his hands, that's been well documented with my point before, but if you look at his position played percentage breakdown, he played pretty much exclusively power forward last year. That's where James Borrego decided, you know what, this is where you're rolling with. 92% of where he played last year belonged at that spot. This year, he played just under 70% at the power forward position. And then he got moved up to 3 when Gordon Hayward goes down. You bring in PJ Washington, who we've talked about his versatility quite a bit, but they've also experimented with Miles at the center spot a little. And those were lineups that actually worked. Like Miles playing center had its moments. And here's the other thing I want to mention. Him and PJ. Well, there's a lot.
You said that a lot this segment.
I know. And then one more thing, A. One more thing, B. No, remember the conversation about PJ and Washington, or PJ Washington and Miles Bridges playing on the floor together. It was redundant. You were going to have to move on from one or the other. Mm-hmm. PJ Washington and Miles Bridges had the top plus minus of any duo on the Charlotte Hornets team that played any significant amount of minutes. How incredible is that? Like, this was a conversation we always had about one of them has to go. They just can't share the floor together. Well, in fact, they were the best at doing it. They were plus 2.6. And that
figured it out.
That's impressive. So awesome stuff to see. All right. We went through what's right with Miles Bridges. So coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast, we're going to talk about what went wrong with Miles Bridges on the Locked On Podcast Network, not before we discuss BetOnline.net. It's your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all of the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball, and this weekend's run to the Roses that's already happened. And we're going to need to change the read. I should have not been Ron Burgundy and changed it, but I'm going to do better next time. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sport wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Where can Miles Bridges improve? We'll talk about that next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
This is Locked On Hornets.
To start this off, we all know about LeBron and how he built a school and it got a lot of fanfare. By the time 2019 closes, Bismack Biyombo is planning to have 6 schools.
Take that, LeBron.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Talked a little bit about some of the things Miles Bridges needs to improve on. Doug, it's shooting, it's defense. Those are the two things that clearly needs to take place. What kind of numbers or just notes do you have from this past season that would allow Miles to improve even more than he did this past year?
Yeah, I don't think you need to dig down into the advanced numbers to understand really what happened with Miles Bridges and his shooting and his efficiency overall. I mean, the fact that he dropped from a 40% three-point shooter in 2020, 2021 to a 33.1% shooter, that's with the amount, the volume of threes that are being taken in the game today, that kind of dip, it doesn't matter how well you are at or how great you are at finishing at the rim. that's going to affect your overall efficiency, and it certainly did for Miles. Defensively, I thought I expected a leap from Miles Bridges, honestly. That's where I expected a leap this season. I didn't expect the leap in the points per game production. I thought certainly he would improve, not to the level he did. I thought he was really going to step up and be the defensive leader of this team, the player that you unleashed onto the team's best wing. And it just didn't turn out that way. There were just too many times where he was caught sleeping on back cuts, and I just didn't regard him as like a really tough defender this season. And it was disappointing. It was PJ Washington who ended up really being that player for the Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah, and the defensive stuff, it's not like he's lacking in a ton of athleticism. We've discussed maybe the lateral quickness not being a strong suit. It's not like PJ Washington is amazing moving from side to side, but he finds ways. He's a really smart defender. And I think that's where, it comes from Miles Bridges. I think it's not that he doesn't understand the game completely. It's just that maybe there's just not the focus every single time down the floor. And you have to wonder, as we talk about quite a bit with the players that share a ton of the offensive load, which Miles clearly did this season with his improvement, where is that balance? So to me, Doug, I don't think Miles was so amazing offensively to where you'll give a little bit of an excuse here and there for his lapses on defense, if that makes sense. But Zach Lowe was talking about this on his podcast with Kevin O'Connor regarding Luka Doncic. Luka got picked on constantly in that Phoenix series in the game 2, I think, in that second half, where they just attack him a million times. But Luka is one of the best basketball players in the world offensively, for sure. So how much leeway do you bake in there? At least some. Like, that's not the case with Miles, man. There can't be the back cut that you just completely forget about in the most crucial of moments. That just can't happen. We know that he is improved as far as an off-ball defender overall, because it was pretty bad in years past. It still just isn't quite to the level I think most people would like to see. And you even look at all of the advanced numbers that he's improved in this past year. You look at the defensive plus minus, he actually was worse this year than he was in previous years. And, defensive box plus minus, he was actually a minus 0.3 this season. Last year, he was a positive 0.1. So it's not like this huge drop, but it goes to show you he's kind of staying the same based off what we've seen, based off some of the numbers you might look at.
Well, and as a team, they would often talk about how, this was a team that was really powered by their offense. I mean, I don't think they really had a chance of being a great defensive team just because of personnel. And they needed to make some internal improvements that didn't happen defensively that hopefully will happen next season. But I don't think they really had a shot at being one of the top 5-10 defenses in the league, but they could have been average, and they were below average. And part of that, as documented by the team, was that they would have nights when they weren't shooting well or they just weren't playing well offensively, and they would let that leak into their defense. And I think I would put Miles in a group of players that was consistently, if he wasn't playing well offensively, him and like Terry Rozier, I think, if they weren't playing well defensively or offensively, they were generally going to be counted on to play poorly defensively. I want to do note one thing on the 3 points conversation as well. Shot quality was there. Like, he was, if you look at the shot quality number from PBP stats, he was in the group of players that were above average in shot quality with Kelly Oubre, with PJ Washington, with Cody Martin, and the bigs, which the bigs are always going to be high shot quality. Because
and probably a LaMelo effect too there with your shot quality. In fact, I did see a stat. I think like LaMelo was up with the best players in the game as far as other guys getting great shots, and just another LaMelo effect on this team.
Yeah, totally. And so his shot quality was there. I don't think that was the problem. I think it would be an interesting thing to dive into him, in the offseason. Did some of the things that he did in the previous offseason to improve on his ability to get to the rim, to get fouled, to generate offense. Did those things leak into his ability to knock down shots? Was it mental? Was it something, technical in his shot? I think it would be really interesting to kind of explore that with him, after they all get back and get ready for the season. The final thing that I think went wrong for Miles this season that I don't even know if I put down in the rundown, but I just thought about, is just, I don't even know like what word, but like understanding time and situation. And there were a few times where he got technicals where it really wasn't helpful to the team. It was actually detrimental to the team. Obviously, he gets ejected in that Atlanta Hawks game, and it was a big deal. He throws his headband. It hits a young woman in the head. He didn't intend to hit the young woman in the head, but there was a fan that was heckling him. Anyhow, it became a thing. So poise. I think poise is the word I was looking for previously. He lacked poise in certain situations, and from a team leader, somebody that's going to be a top scorer, somebody that you might give a max contract to.
Yeah.
You hope.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really have a reputation of this. This season was particularly frustrating, I think, for a lot of players. It seemed to be frustrating for Miles, but you hope that he has more poise, coming into these next few seasons if they extend him, and give him the contract.
I think that's even something he's maybe even alluded to, right? Miles said he has to be better in those situations. He's mentioned that a couple of times. And then going back to the 3-point stuff, because it's just such a visibly in your face type of thing that he needs to improve on. It's another corner 3-point detriment this year, Doug. It's weird how all of the players on this team just did not shoot as well from the 3-point line in the corner as they did the year prior. Miles Bridges was probably the biggest victim of that drop. This year, he shot 34.4% from the corners, and last year he shot 43.6. That is a monster drop. 43.6 last year to 34 this year. I mean, what a monster drop that is. And if Miles can just increase that to even 40, just shoot 40, that's going to really help you. But the true shooting is still at 60, which is above league average, despite him not shooting well from 3 this season. And it's almost like when he shoots, he's like kind of turning. He's got one leg out and one leg back. I wonder if that was kind of happening last year. I should have looked it up. It's not going to take any time at all. But like just the form almost kind of trying to, I don't know, put some body language into it, if that makes sense. It was kind of, I wonder if the form was consistent from year to year.
Going back, yeah, I don't know. I'm not a shot doctor,
yeah, right.
So, and I don't pretend.
That's why
I don't pretend to be one on television either. But I will tell you that on wide open attempts last season, when he was a 40% shooter, he was 43% on threes that were wide open. This past season, that number dropped to 37% on open shots where a defender is 4 to 6 feet away. That number 2 seasons ago was 36%. And this season, let me double check. I think it was 31%. So that number on open attempts, yes, drops to 31%. So that's 5 percentage point drop on both of those, and a 7 percentage drop on, and the tight coverage, closest defender, tight coverage, it falls through the floor. So, he was getting open attempts and, he wasn't knocking down as many of them as he did last season. Yeah.
Hopefully Miles can improve defensively, improve that shot, whether they're just open. You still want him to play the same way though, right? The shot quality was there. He drove a lot more. It led to a higher free throw attempt rate. It's not at all wanting him to play a different style offensively. I think this is perfect. I like the intention behind everything that took place this past year. Now it's just the whole make or miss league thing. Now it's just making those open shots, the corner threes, and expanding upon that part of your game, more so at least offensively, and then defensively, we all know what it is there. He's just got to stay in the moment.
We can't underestimate what it means for a player's role to change and how that has ripple effects in their game, right? I mean, in previous seasons, I think his role was very tight. Like, I think there were certain spots in the floor and plays that were run where Miles Bridges knew exactly where he was going to be and could find that rhythm with those particular shots. Especially, I mean, in his first couple of seasons, it was like Miles in the corner, Miles in the corner, Miles in the corner. That's where he was. As he's getting better at both being a ball handler and just a team offense generator, his role is expanding. And so sometimes he has to find his own shot. And so that's a whole different ball game. So we can't underestimate that. Also, the offense in the 4 years that Borrego was coached got more and more, and LaMelo Ball accelerated this through the roof. The offense got more jazz. It got more improvisational. It got less structured. And so again, I think just all of that combined together, Miles, I think Miles is going to spend this offseason obviously working really hard on all of this. He said so in his post-game or his postseason, wrap up interviews, that he's going to work hard on this. And I think that's where the work has to come. Like, as you generate all of this offense and it gets more improvisational, how do you find that 3-point shot? How do you knock it down consistently? I think he's going to figure it out.
Yeah, I do too. And assuming that he comes back, maybe that's wrong to do, but let's just assume that he comes back. Him having that extra year with LaMelo is only going to help. Having an extra year playing maybe that style of offense, a lot of that's going to have to do with whatever coach comes in and whatever style he wants to implement. But hopefully he allows LaMelo and Miles to create that jazz that you're talking about. And I just think it goes back to what Gordon Hayward talks about when he would mention the Denver Nuggets or the Utah Jazz or some of these other teams that were among the best, at least in the regular season. He would say they've been together a long time. And that goes back to LaMelo saying, if you want to build something, it's important to bring back Miles Bridges. And so as these guys get more comfortable with one another, and then you start to figure each other out a lot more, right? LaMelo, it's funny because, this was his second year in the league this past season, but that's still less than quite a bit of other 2-year players in the league because of the shortened season, because of how quickly he had to be thrown into the process because of the pandemic and how it affected things like this, all and the areas injury. that draft class. An injury too. And COVID. Yeah. Weird. Just kind of weird. So we'll see how all that takes place.
I know this season's about Miles. I know that's such a great point though. When we talk about the development of LaMelo Ball and what we're expecting, what we're going to see from him, like the expectations cannot be the simple expectations that we have for a second or third year player. We have to take those things into account and marvel at the fact that he's already been an all-star despite all of those challenges.
Pretty crazy.
And I think you're right. I think it's important to, as you're having these negotiations with Miles Bridges and his next contract, obviously you want to try to take care of the financial health of the team, but I think you do have to make those considerations and think, hey, this could help us retain. If LaMelo thinks that Miles is important, that's something that we have to factor into the money.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast, we'll talk about maybe a new way that you can watch the Charlotte Hornets this season, which I'm kind of hopeful for. Hopefully that is going to take place. We'll talk about that possibility. But now before we talk about Built Bar, because summer is on its way, and with summer, you're going to need some food on the go. Built Bars are the perfect snack to take with you on family vacations. You can throw them in your bags. You can throw them in your kids' backpacks. You can make sure that everyone has a Built Bar so you are fueled for your summer adventures. The best part about Built Bars is that they're healthy and they're delicious. You don't have to sacrifice one or the other. You can get healthy food with it also being covered in 100% chocolate and just tasting really good, whether it be an OG flavor, a staple, just like your normal chocolate, maybe some of the intersection with chocolate and fruit, like banana, cream pie, banana and chocolate, orange, raspberry. It's all so very good. And they really don't top more than like 150 calories per bar. That actually might even be on the high note. It's so good. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Let's try to get you a new way to watch the Charlotte Hornets next season. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
This is Locked On Hornets.
Tip off. Boom. I grab it. Triple threat. Let's go. Let's go set our offense and let's go punch above our weight. I'm ready. Grab it. A player rolls up to me immediately, is on me extremely fast, grabs the basketball. And so now we're trying to fight for it. I'm like grabbing it. He's grabbing it, ripping it. Boom. Rips it. Says, give me that. Throws it. Transition 2-0. We lose like 50-20. Just ripped it from me. That's
honestly, I think that story is sadder than your heart problems.
It is. I'll take the heart problems all day long. Just don't embarrass me in front of everybody at UNC Women.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Doug, I think something we're all hopeful for is just an easy way for cord cutters to watch the Charlotte Hornets. It's been such a complaint from me, from everybody else. How in the world can we do this? Where it's just easy, because there are ways to do it, but it's always a hassle. And plus, it always hurts fandom. We want to be a fan, and yet these leagues, baseball is notorious for this. Leagues make it so hard for you to consume and enjoy their product. I mean, you would think the league should come in. I understand the business relationship between some of these, providers and the league itself, but you have to imagine the league is like, they want to consume our product. Let's please allow it to be easy. Well, that might happen, Doug. I know you have some information on that.
Oh, so it appears that Bally Sports is going to unleash upon the world a over-the-top service. Boy, do we need another one of those, folks.
Yeah, maybe I'm like overselling this, to be honest with you. I just am happy that there's a new avenue that would allow us to watch.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it is incrementally better than some of the options that people had. I think so. It looks like it's going to be $20. I'm sure they'll have official announcements and all kinds of stuff. I just think it's interesting that they've allowed all of this time to go by without offering this kind of alternative for people who are in the viewing area. Because people like me, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, so I can hook up League Pass. I do the one team. Other than the times when they play the Grizzlies or the Hawks, because for some reason both of those teams are in market for me.
Yeah.
Then I have to find alternatives to watch the Hornets. But otherwise, I can watch all of those games easily. But if you are anywhere within the viewing area of the Charlotte Hornets, those things are going to get blacked out. Now at least you'll have an opportunity to fork over $20 a month if you so choose and watch those games. But all of this time has gone by, and I think people have searched out cord cutters because you can't watch it on YouTube TV. You can't watch it on Hulu. All these RSNs have said, no, this is our stuff. You can't have this stuff. And so, but they don't understand that, like when they say, hey, YouTube TV, you can't have this stuff. Hey, Hulu TV, you can't have this stuff. What they're really saying is, hey, fans, you can't have this stuff. And so then fans go, well, I want to watch the team. I'm going to find out how to watch the team. And they go to these, sketchy websites. And now I think a lot of people have figured this stuff out. I'm interested to see how well this thing does. Doesn't help me at all because all of these RSNs are still region locked. So like if I want to watch the Hornets, I still have to go to League Pass. I can't like hook up Bally Sports South for $20. I don't think. It doesn't appear to be that way.
Well, and I guess, yeah, man, that comes to a point where maybe I was overselling it a little bit because like, if I guess, are you going to have, cable? I haven't read. No,
you're not going to have cable.
Right,
you're not going to have cable, but you will have to be within that.
Right.
And they, because of IP addresses and stuff, they know where you are. Right. And I'm sure there are various ways to get around it, but I'm sure the commenters will put in all kinds of ways, and that's fine.
But he's not asking you.
I'm getting a lot. Yeah. But that's fine. But a lot of people aren't going to go down all of those avenues to figure all of that stuff out. So, I think it's a step, but it's a weird step. So all of this, because it just seems so simple to people like you and I. We're like, hey, NBA, make it easier to watch the product. The problem is that all this stuff is wrapped up in this time and place in our history. It wasn't too long ago, but technology is moving very quickly, when the NBA had a problem. They have a product. They want to show that product to the world. They need to partner with people that have the technology and the money and the things that are necessary to put that signal out into the world. Those were RSNs. Those were, the cable providers, all of that stuff. Well, of course, the internet has just completely upended all of that, and how fast everything is, and the ability for people to run their own networks is crazy. I don't know why the NBA keeps fouling up League Pass. League Pass is an embarrassment. I mean, at least MLB, they have a functioning product, an over-the-top service of their own. I don't remember what it's called, MLB First Inning or something. But that thing is, that thing is good. The NBA League Pass is a disaster on every level, on an access level, on a technical level. It makes it more difficult, even for people like me who paid the money to get one team. It's just a giant disaster. I don't get it. I think the NBA has to continue to strongly, in whatever way possible, contractually unwind all of the impediments for the NBA to say, hey, world, we have a product. Here you go. Watch it in the way that we want you to watch it. Pay us the money. Here's a gambling advertisement. Give us the money. Forget RSN. Forget all of this stuff, because it's just what we have now is unbelievable. I hope that when my daughter grows up, if she's interested in watching basketball, that she lives in a world that it's just much easier than what the NBA has made it.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to shoot for. That's your one request for the world to be better, for your daughter to live in. It's that we be able to consume the NBA's product at a better level and more efficient level. And even if you don't live in the city of Charlotte, you want to talk about coaching rankings real quickly? James Plowright, he is a part of Sports Illustrated. We've given him a couple of shouts here. Does an excellent job covering the Charlotte Hornets. Did a really cool thing, and he's done this before, where he kind of polls any Hornets content creator, and he asked anybody who was a part of this to rank their top 7 coaching candidates listed within this specific category of people that have maybe been linked to the team, right? So like a Quinn Snyder wasn't included, a Mike Brown, who was actually just hired by Sacramento. We'll get to that in just a moment, but he wasn't included, right? So only guys that have been linked to the Charlotte Hornets in one way or the other. And 9 people, I think of the 14 content creators that he asked, 9 people voted Darvin Ham as their number 1 coaching candidate. Assistant for the Milwaukee Bucks. We talked a little bit about that on Friday. So the results came in, and it was Darvin Ham was number 1. Mike D'Antoni came in at 2. Kenny Atkinson at 3. Sean Sweeney at 4. David Vanterpool at 5, Mark Jackson at 6, and Charles Lee at 7. And Charles Lee, probably the least known about guy, but he's also an assistant on that Buck staff under Mike Budenholzer. What did you make of these rankings, Doug, when you saw James Plowright put them out there?
I'm fine with these rankings.
Yeah.
D'Antoni is my pick, but obviously I've been very vocal about that on the show for a variety of reasons that we, I just think he's the right coach for the moment. Honestly, I think Darvin Ham would be a fine coach. I think he would be. I can't guarantee it. I mean, because we don't have, we don't have that record of head coaching experience to really lean on there. But I think from all accounts and his philosophies and his experience, under some great regimes, I think he would come in here and do a fantastic job. But I just don't think I don't think he's the right coach for the moment. And B, I think that he is not going to want to coach Charlotte. I think he has bigger franchise aspirations, possibly the Los Angeles Lakers. We'll see. But I think Mike D'Antoni is the easier sell. And I think, honestly, because of his experience, he can come into this core group and have a lot of cachet and say, hey, I've gotten 50 wins. I know how to get us there. I've gotten to conference finals. I know how to get us there. If you listen to me, and, I've got some philosophies here that seem to line up with your superstar point guard. If you follow me, I'll take you there. That's my pick.
Yeah, I went. So I put together my rankings too. I was a part of this poll. Darvin Ham was number 1. David Vanterpool is 2 for me. He just gets so many endorsements from star players, and I want that relationship. Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum developed under him. They love him. Karl Anthony Towns, during Vanderpool's time in Minnesota, endorsed him as a head coach. I like that. So I put him at number 2. There's some other things I just don't want to go into too much detail. Sean Sweeney for 3. And then I put Mike D'Antoni 4. After kind of looking at Atkinson, well, it's better than what I had him. It was at 5th. But then I put Kenny Atkinson kind of behind D'Antoni. But here's the thing, Doug, it's kind of like what you said with Darvin Ham. I want to take the swing for the fences on a young coach that can come in and grow with this young roster. We've gone through that philosophy already, but it's not like D'Antoni's a bad choice by any means, in my opinion. I'd be cool to roll with D'Antoni. And it goes to the mode of this being a good group of names overall. I don't, for the most part, I mean, I can't, besides Mark Jackson, I can't think of another guy that could come in here and I'd be angry at. Even Charles Lee, I have him so far down the list, but I just don't know anything about him. He's been on the staff for Mike Budenholzer quite a bit, and I put him 6. But other than that, those are my rankings. And
by
it's
the way,
overall a good
Sacramento.
Yeah,
you had one job. Sacramento, you had one job to hire Mark Jackson. That's all you had to do. You just had to hire Mark Jackson so that the Charlotte Hornets could not even consider hiring Mark Jackson. And you went and got another. Instead of getting the former Warriors head coach, you went and got another Warriors assistant.
That's right.
Mike Brown.
By the way, I do like that hire for them, but I totally get what you're saying, and I'm on board 100% of the way. They just need a grown up. They need a dude that you talk about having successful seasons, coming from a successful franchise, just being a grown up in the room that is going to have to deal with all of that nonsense that takes place in Sacramento land. I just like, okay, they hired a really competent guy in Mike Brown. Just come in and straighten everything out and just get this franchise on the right path. And hope I don't know if Sacramento's going to allow him to do that, but Mike Brown, just an overall stand-up guy in the association.
I feel bad for Mike Brown. I feel bad for Mike Brown.
Yeah.
He's gone into a franchise that is so dysfunctional it can't even dysfunction correctly.
Right. Prayers to you, Mike Brown. Hopefully everything works out for you in Sacramento. All right, that'll do it for this edition of Locked On Hornets. Thanks for hopping on with us. We always appreciate your support and making us your first listen every single day. Now make your second listen Locked On NBA, from the first jump ball of the play-in tournament to the last possession of the finals. Locked On experts take you deep inside the playoffs with insight and analysis affecting all 30 teams. We'll continue our player capsules. We'll keep you up to date on the coaching candidates. We'll let you know the Charlotte Hornets make a hire at any point. There's a lot of candidates now. They've interviewed quite a few guys, so maybe an announcement could be coming at some point this week. We'll keep you in tune here on the Locked On Hornets podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network.